it's Alex, the Booktubers. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in November. And first off, I did want to mention my new sweatshirt, which is my favourite recent purchase. It's a Burbs themed Satan is our pal design. I got this recently from Sadist Art Designs. I'll leave a link to them below. I'm not affiliated with them, you know, I bought this with my own money, but they have really awesome designs, and yeah, I am really pleased with my purchase. So I just wanted to mention it because I'm really stoked with it. So anyway, onto the books, and you will never guess what, but I had not one, but 2 5-star reads in November, which, has that ever happened before in 1 month? I don't know if it has, so that was pretty spectacular. So let's start off with those 2 because I highly recommend them. And first up is Battle Royale by Koushun Takami, and this was translated by, Yuji Oniki. And this is a book that I've been meaning to pick up for ages, but it's over 600 pages long, and yeah, you know how it goes. Big books tend to get avoided around here. I don't know why I am like that. You know, it's usually never a bad thing to pick up a big book when I finally get round to them, but still I have this hesitation. Anyway, I remember seeing the film adaptation of this when it came out at the cinemas, and I remember enjoying it. And I remember the basic premise of, you know, it being a bunch of teenagers who are sent to this island, and it's basically a one person survives type of scenario where, yeah, they have to kill or be killed. And I don't remember any more specific details from the film, I'll be honest, other than I enjoyed it. But I think the book gave me so much more than I remember the film doing. And yes, it is a long one, but it didn't feel that long. I found it to be thoroughly absorbing. The length of the story, yeah, gives us that opportunity to really get to know a lot of the characters. And while there are definitely plenty of instances where we're introduced to a character and we get, you know, a bunch of information about them and what's going on with them, and then they get killed. But the fact that, you know, you don't know as you're reading it which of these characters is going to stay for longer and which ones are going to be picked off immediately. So I still thought that worked really well. It didn't feel like unnecessary information, if that makes sense. And yeah, the, you know, slow whittling down of the numbers was, yeah, just really gripping. There are definitely some characters that you get to know a lot better because, you know, they play a larger role in the story and, you know, basically last for longer. But yeah, I can't go into any spoilers, of course. But this was just so good. Like, I had such a great time with it. And I definitely expected it to be a bit more, you know, pulpy maybe than it actually is. I think there's a lot more to this story than just, you know, the premise itself is, yeah, that's fairly pulpy. But I think the actual book is really, really well done. So it starts off with 42 students plus some other characters. And yeah, the fact that there can be that many characters in a story and it still work really well. There were times, I will admit, that I got confused, you know, between characters, or I just couldn't remember who a certain character was, you know, when they cropped up again. But I still think it was really, really well done with the way that it handled that amount of characters. And yeah, I really was feeling for certain characters, and oh my god, like towards the end I was just, yeah, it was just really wonderfully done. It had, yeah, way more heart to it. It also has a lot of like social and political commentary that I wasn't necessarily expecting. you know, I expected like a surface level kind of thing, but there's more to it than that in the book. So yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. It's, yeah, one of my favourite books of the year for sure. If you, like me, had been putting it off, yeah, just don't put it off any longer. Pick it up. It's amazing. It's definitely one, yeah, that I think will stick with me. It definitely had more of an emotional aspect to it than I expected. And I think one thing I remember hearing a couple of people say they didn't like was, yeah, there were too many characters. Yeah, I didn't think there were too many. I think it was handled really well. And then the other thing was that a lot of the characters, you know, they know that they're about to be killed or whatever, and all they can think about is, oh, but I have a crush on so-and-so. And I think some people found that annoying. I didn't find it annoying. I thought it was completely believable and realistic. They're teenagers. You know, I feel like when I was a teenager, if I had been in a similar situation, that would have been my priority as well, to be, yeah, worrying about the person I had a crush on rather than more immediate issues. So yeah, I thought that was handled really well. The writing style is really easy to get into, but yeah, there are some really great details and descriptions in here that really made the story more than, you know, it might have been in, you know, maybe a not as talented author's hands, perhaps. And yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention is a little bit spoilery, not really specifically, but in a roundabout way it could be spoilery. So if you haven't read it, you can skip ahead till I'm no longer holding up the book. But basically the song that's mentioned a couple of times, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. Oh my God, I'm like about to cry just thinking about it. Alex, hold it together. But you know, that's a classic, but it's not necessarily a song that's ever had any like emotional, you know, hold on me, I guess. But it features in the book, and basically like a few days after finishing reading this, I was at work and Born to Run came on the radio, and like I was just like moments away from having to run to the toilets to have a good cry, basically. So yeah, and I've heard it a couple of times since, and I'm just like, oh my God, this song will never be the same again. It will always be tied to Battle Royale for me now, which is definitely not something I was expecting from this book. So that's pretty cool. So yes, that's that. Battle Royale was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Highly recommend. And the other 5-star book that I read in November was Peel Back and See by Mike Thorn. This is a short story collection, and yeah, another book that just really impressed me this month. I've read, you know, some of his work before and it's been excellent, but I think, yeah, the quality of the stories in this particular collection were just so strong, like throughout the book. You know, there weren't any bad stories in here. There weren't even any good stories in here. They were all great and fantastic. Yeah, not only is he a really talented writer, but just the ideas, the creativity, the imagination, you know, within some of these stories was really kind of mind-blowing. And yeah, made for a very interesting and varied collection. You know, some of them are very, you know, dealing with kind of real people, real things happening, whereas others are a bit more, you know, the strange, the weird, the fantastique, as Garth Marenghi would say, although this is, yeah, very not Garth Marenghi. Speaking of which, I did pre-order his book, Teratome. I'm just waiting to receive it because, yeah, long story, but I just haven't received it yet. So anyway, when I do, I'm very excited to read it. But anyway, back to Peel Back and See. It opens on an absolute banger of a story called Havoc, which is about a character who is given a link to basically like a live stream of some very strange thing going on. I won't go into details, but yeah, after having watched it, it has a hold on him and affects things. So yeah, that was a really great one to open the collection with. And yeah, I mean, they really were all brilliant stories. I was just constantly, like, every time I finished one story, I'm like, damn, that one was great too. Like, how is there not a bad story in this whole collection? That's rare, honestly. But yeah, I think the ones that like really stood out to me, you know, out of all of the amazing ones, other than the first one, Havoc, I also really liked Exhumation, which starts off with a character who is attending a funeral, and yeah, things just get like very unsettling and tense pretty quickly, but then it just goes in a direction that I was like not expecting, and I was like, okay, that was dark. Brilliant. Let's see. Oh, Offer to the Adversary is about a character who is writing about this painting, and yeah, I love horror that's related to art somehow, and this was just a really fantastic example of that. Yeah, just totally my jam. And then the final story, Fade to White, yeah, just brilliantly written, very evocative, and yeah, I know the author has spoken about this collection as being, you know, a very personal collection, and I think that really comes through just in the strength of the writing, the, yeah, you know, believability and like immersiveness of the stories and the characters within them. Yeah, just has a real depth to them. And yeah, another thing I really liked about this is that at the end of the book, there are notes from the author about, you know, the kind of the conception of the story or the inspiration behind the story. So yeah, I find stuff like that super interesting. I think all authors should do that with their story collections. So yeah, so that was just a little added bonus, you know, to see a little bit of the behind the scenes, you know, workings to, you know, what went into each story. So that was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, this is how a short story collection should be done. It was just, yeah, really impressive. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. So I highly recommend this one. So yes, another 5-star read for me. I highly recommend it. Yeah, definitely gonna stick with me, and yeah, it's one of my favourites of the year for sure. Okay, so the other books I'll just talk about in the order that I read them. So next up was Party Line by A. Bates, and this is, yeah, a YA vintage horror title about a character who he's a bit lonely and, you know, wants a girlfriend but is too shy around girls and never knows what to say. And there's a party line that he uses where, you know, a few people can be on the same line chatting, and he uses that to meet girls. And then, yeah, as the story goes on, a girl goes missing and he thinks that she was someone he had spoken with on the party line, and he starts to suspect another male caller as being, you know, something to do with this girl's disappearance. I thought this was, yeah, it was pretty good. I thought it definitely had some interesting moments and really well done moments within the story as he's, yeah, trying to figure things out. But I think there were just a couple of things that really bogged it down. Yeah, one of which was there ends up being this like side story of him trying to get a car, and there was just a lot of detail there that I just felt was really unnecessary. So that kind of was like, why are we focused on this car thing? Anyway, and then, yeah, I think him wanting a girlfriend, it just, you know, got a bit repetitive maybe in that side of the story. But I thought the mystery aspect of it and the things that are happening related to that were pretty well done and quite interesting. And yeah, I also thought it was interesting how the character did grow during the story. Like he finally kind of breaks free from his need to use the party line and actually, you know, kind of grows in confidence a bit and, you know, tries to meet new people and start relationships and stuff like that. So, you know, that was, I think, pretty cool and well done. But otherwise, yeah, overall this one was just okay for me. Then I read The Want Ad Killer by Anne Rule. This is a true crime book, and it's one I found recently in a thrift store, and I'd never read any Anne Rule before, but yeah, this one was really good. So yeah, based on that, I would read more of her work. And I read this as a buddy read with Kelly at Kelly Hooked on Books. I'll leave a link to her channel. Definitely go check her out if you haven't already. Yeah, we both thought this was really good, really well written. And it's a case I wasn't familiar with. Someone called Harvey Lewis Carignan. And yeah, basically he was just a scumbag and just a misogynist, awful human being, really. Yeah, the crimes he committed were really awful to read about. And one really horrible element of the story is the fact that he was able to get away with a crime which allowed him to continue committing crimes. So there were more and more victims as yeah, he just wasn't convicted and put away as he should have been, you know, years previously. So very frustrating to read about that, and yeah, heartbreaking to hear, you know, the sides of the story, you know, from like, you know, the mothers of the victims and stuff. Like, yeah, horrible. Yeah, this guy was, yeah, just disgusting, basically. Yeah, the things that he did were truly awful. I think the book did a really good job of relaying all of the information in, you know, just it was a well plotted out book, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And yeah, it made for an interesting read, even though, yeah, not exactly a fun one. But yeah, I rated this one 4 stars. Then I read The Changeling by Victor LaValle, and this book was very kindly sent to me by my friend Laurie, so thank you again, Laurie, for sending this my way. I know it's taken me a while to pick it up, but yeah, I'm glad I finally did. I had previously only read one other book by this author. It was The Ballad of Black Tom, and that was excellent. So yeah, I was really looking forward to reading more of his work, and yeah, this one didn't disappoint. So this is about a husband and wife, and they have a baby, but yeah, life gets difficult with, you know, looking after the baby and just them trying to keep their lives together. And yeah, look, I'm going to read the back so I don't say anything that's more spoilery. So the characters are Apollo and Emma, and it says, at first Emma seems to be exhibiting signs of postpartum depression, but before Apollo can do anything to help, Emma commits a horrific act and vanishes. Thus begins Apollo's quest to find a wife and child who are nothing like he'd imagined. So yeah, this book is definitely a lot more layered than I first expected when I started reading it. It definitely goes in a few different directions. It's got quite a few different twists and turns to the story. And yeah, it does have a bit of a fairy tale theme to parts of the story, whereas other parts of the story are very real stuff, rooted in the real world type of things. So I thought the combination worked really well. Yeah, I really liked the characters here, and I feel like the horror elements are, I don't know, maybe somewhat kind of few and far between in one sense, but when they hit, like, they really hit. So I thought it worked really well. I think there were a couple of times when maybe the way certain things played out didn't quite work for me, or I didn't feel, yeah, I don't know, couldn't quite get on board with them maybe. But overall, a really excellent book. I'd definitely recommend it. And yeah, overall, I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 4 stars. And last up, I read Monster by Christopher Pike, another vintage YA horror novel. And yeah, this one was excellent. It's one I have been wanting to read for ages, and yeah, I just recently found a copy at a library book sale. So yeah, I was super stoked to find it and be able to read it. And yeah, this is about a teenage girl who, yeah, rocks up at a party and shoots a couple of people, and her reason behind it is that she says they're monsters. And we're following a different girl, Angela, who is fairly new in town, but she had recently become quite close friends with Mary, the one who, yeah, turned up at the party with a shotgun. And yeah, Angela is trying to find out exactly what's going on. And yeah, I don't know, I don't want to say much more about this one because that's all I really knew going into it. And I'm glad of that fact because it was kind of a wild ride, finding out, yeah, the things going on. Yeah, Christopher Pike definitely was one of the more unique writers, you know, during the, you know, 90s or so of, you know, YA horror and adjacent stuff. And yeah, this one is no exception. This is definitely one of my favourites of his that I've read so far. It's, yeah, an interesting concept, and I really like the writing style, and yeah, it's not afraid to get, you know, kind of violent and gory at times. It's not afraid to get a bit saucy at times. Yeah, there's her and this guy, say no more, but you know, things, they get a bit frisky. Yeah, I just thought this was a really fun one. Yeah, a little bit crazy, but yeah, a really enjoyable read. So 4 stars for Monster by Christopher Pike. Before I sign off, I did also want to mention that there is a group read going on of Wetbones by John Shirley over on Kelly, who I mentioned in the video previously. She has a monthly book club called From Hell Book Club, where we read vintage horror. And yeah, I picked December's book, which is Wetbones. It is a splatterpunk novel from the 90s. And yeah, I just started reading this the other day and I'm enjoying it so far. I've heard this is a pretty wild and crazy one, so yeah, fingers crossed. And yeah, if you would like to join in with us, Kelly has a Discord where we chat about the book, so I'll leave a link to her channel. You can go check that out and join if you want to join in with reading it. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. But yeah, November ended up being a pretty good reading month for me, and it was awesome to get 2 5-star reads in 1 month. So yeah, am I like a real booktuber now? Anyway, do let me know if you read any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you've been reading recently. If you have any recommendations, I would love to hear about them. Anyway, yeah, hope you all had a good November. I hope you're having a good December so far. Like, how are we in December already? I don't even know. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye.